I don't know about you, but as I played through the Dragon Quest III HD-2D remake, I couldn't help but think that this style would work really well with other classic JRPGs. First seen back in 2018 with the release of Octopath Traveler, the HD-2D style that places flat, pixelated avatars onto 3D backgrounds with plenty of lighting effects kinda revitalized that classic pixel aesthetic JRPGs were known for in the late 80s and 90s. A time before the 3D reckoning of Final Fantasy VII that changed the genre forever. At the time of this recording, the Dragon Quest III HD-2D remake is sitting at a healthy 85 average on OpenCritic. I reviewed it very highly over at The Escapist and here on my own channel, particularly loving how the fresh new look maintained the feel of the original. And I love the revived soundtrack even more. And seeing as other HD-2D games like Triangle Strategy and Octopath Traveler 2 are sitting around that score as well, I think it's safe to say people like HD-2D. We already know we're getting the first two Dragon Quest games remade in this style for next year. And Star Ocean Second Story R also saw a lot of success with its HD-2D upgrade last year. It's not a stretch or a hot take to assume we'll see more of this style. So this got me thinking, what other JRPGs would benefit from HD-2D remakes? Honestly, you could peg any pixel-based JRPG for an HD-2D update. Relatively forgotten series like Lufia and Breath of Fire could definitely use one, and pretty much every Final Fantasy before 7 would look much better than the relatively recent pixel remasters. In fact, Hayes Madsen just published an interview over at Inverse.com that he conducted with the Dragon Quest III HD-2D producer, Masaki Hayasaka. In it, Hayasaka revealed that they referenced Final Fantasy VI for the HD-2D style of Octopath Traveler, which is pretty cool, and he wants to see Final Fantasy VI remade in the HD-2D style as well. So outside of obvious picks like Final Fantasy VI, I personally would love the Fire Emblem games from the Game Boy Advance era, the Blazing Blade and Sacred Stones, to get this treatment. While Dragon Quest III HD-2D proves that remakes don't need a good story to be successful, the Blazing Blade and the Sacred Stones have pretty decent narratives behind them that would greatly benefit from the auxiliary features a remake entails, like voice acting. Lyn is still one of my favorite Fire Emblem characters after all, and Ephraim and Erika's split story was novel back in 2005 and deserves a bit more love. Intelligent Systems, the developers behind Fire Emblem, are no stranger to remakes either, as they've already remade the first two games with the releases of Fire Emblem Shadow Dragon and Fire Emblem Shadows of Valentia. But instead of building upon the pixel-based style the series had until Path of Radiance in 2005, they went with this waxy 3D style that nobody really liked for the former, and a kind of chibi 3D version popularized by Fire Emblem Awakening that was fine, I guess, for the latter. Neither are something I want to see in 2024 on the Switch or its more powerful successor if they were to remake the Blazing Blade and the Sacred Stones. Moving on, I also think Pokemon would massively benefit from an HD-2D style after the visual disaster that was Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl. I enjoyed adventuring through Sinnoh again, sure, playing through with Nuzlocke rules to make it far more challenging, but I truly did feel the chibi 3D look killed a lot of the charm the original DS version had, and was a massive step in the wrong direction when compared to the last set of pixelated Pokemon games, Black and White and its sequels. After all, we're long overdue for Black and White remakes, so I truly hope the Pokemon Company / Game Freak learned from the criticism surrounding Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl and is taking them in a different visual direction, or handing them off to a different developer and not ILCA, who did those remakes. Look, I love Pokemon, but I have very little faith in the forces behind it, so I doubt this would ever happen. But Black and White, more than any other Pokemon game, deserve an expanded HD 2D style that maintains the look and feel of the original. I can't emphasize enough how awesome it would be to see the 155 Pokemon in the Unova Dex rendered and animated like the Dragon Quest III Remake's monsters. I know, I shouldn't get my hopes up only for the Pokemon Company to break them again. Anyway, before I move on to the final game I want to talk about, I have a quick question for you. What is your favorite JRPG remake of all time? Personally, I love Pokemon Heart Gold and the DS release of Chrono Trigger, which I still play like a decade and a half later. Let me know what yours are in the comments. Speaking of Chrono Trigger, that's my final HD 2D contender. Square Enix remastered Chrono Cross back in 2022 with the Radical Dreamers edition, and I actually reviewed it for Nintendo Life, scoring it a 6 out of 10 because it just ran so poorly at release and came with so few upgrades. Though I understand Square Enix has since patched things up a bit. But other than a handful of mobile and Steam ports, we haven't seen Chrono Trigger since its DS remake. It's a game so close to my heart that I wouldn't want them to take too many liberties with it, but an HD-2D remake that maintains the aesthetic charm of the original while giving it a fresh, modern feel would be the perfect way to usher in what I consider the best JRPG ever made into the 2020s. Not only would it please longtime fans like myself, just maybe an HD-2D Chrono Trigger remake could garner enough newcomers to warrant a sequel to Chrono Cross. And I would absolutely love to hear more renditions of that amazing soundtrack. I know, I'm probably huffing way too much copium for this to ever happen, and if Square Enix did do it, they'd probably get it wrong. Like, I personally wouldn't want voice acting in Chrono Trigger, like they added in Dragon Quest III HD-2D. The latter is far more whimsical, so it fits, but I think whoever they hire for Frog's voice, for example, would not mesh well with the idea I have of him in my head. Anyway, those are my 3 picks for JRPGs I'd love to see get an HD-2D remake. What about you? Right now I think the style is incredibly fresh and I want to see more of it, rather than awkward or half-assed 3D upgrades that kill off a lot of the nostalgic charm, especially as JRPGs seem more prone to remakes than other genres. As always, let me know in the comments and I'll do my best to respond. And that's all I have for you in this episode of JRPG Weekly, which I've rebranded from my previous JRPG Watch video series. So if you didn't know, my name is Lowell and I'm a freelance game critic based in Japan. I have a love-hate relationship with JRPGs and want to write about them more, but my editors don't want to pay me to do so. So here I am creating a weekly video series where I talk about them as much as I want. And if that sounds good to you, consider giving me a like and subscribe and I'll do it some more. Thank you!